Black Waitress helped 8 Hell's Angels during a storm, then they swore to protect her forever. The first drops hit the diner's windows like bullets. Through the rain-streaked glass, Natalie Brooks watched 8 massive motorcycles pull into the parking lot, their engines rumbling like thunder even through the storm. 8 giants in leather vests dismounted, patches glinting under the flickering neon sign, Hell's Angels MC Georgia Chapter. At 34 years old, Natalie had worked the night shift at Ruby's roadside diner for 6 years. She'd served truckers, drifters, cops, and criminals. But she'd never served Hell's Angels. And right now, watching them stride toward her door, every news story she'd ever heard about motorcycle gangs flashed through her mind like a warning. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, bringing the smell of rain, leather, and motor oil. Water dripped from their beards onto the linoleum floor that Natalie had just mopped. The leader, a man who looked carved from granite with a scar running down his left cheek, surveyed the empty diner with eyes that had clearly seen too much of the world's darkness. The only other customers, an elderly couple in the corner booth, gathered their belongings quickly and left without paying their check. Natalie watched $40 walk out the door, money she desperately needed. Her daughter Kira's asthma medication cost $280 a month. The electric company had sent a final notice. Her car's check engine light had been on for 3 weeks. "We serving them," whispered Danny, the teenage cook, from the kitchen window. His voice cracked with fear. "Nat, my cousin said those guys are dangerous. Like, seriously dangerous." Natalie's hands trembled as she gripped her order pad. She'd heard the stories. Bar fights. Territory disputes. The kind of men who made problems disappear. Her survival instinct screamed at her to claim the diner was closing early, to get these men out before something terrible happened. But then she saw what nobody else seemed to notice. These giants were shivering. Their leather vests, intimidating as they looked, were soaked completely through. One man's lips had a slight blue tinge that Natalie recognized from working double shifts in the cold, hypothermia's early warning. The leader approached the counter slowly, like he was trying not to spook a frightened animal. "Ma'am," his voice was surprisingly soft, almost apologetic. "I know how this looks. I know what you're probably thinking. But our bikes are dying in this weather, roads are flooding, and we just need somewhere warm and dry until this storm passes." Natalie looked past the leather, past the patches, past the intimidating beards and scars. She saw 8 human beings who were cold, wet, and asking for help. She thought about Kira at home with her grandmother, safe and warm. She thought about what she'd want someone to do if her daughter was ever caught in a storm, stranded and desperate. "Take any booth you want," Natalie heard herself say, her voice steadier than she felt. "Coffee's fresh. I'll bring menus." The leader's eyes widened slightly, like he'd expected refusal. "Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that more than you know." As Natalie poured 8 cups of coffee, her hands still shaking slightly, she noticed details that didn't match the dangerous biker stereotype. They hung their wet vests carefully on the coat hooks, not wanting to drip on the seats. They spoke quietly among themselves, no crude language, no threatening behavior. When one accidentally knocked over a sugar dispenser, he immediately cleaned it up without being asked. "Ma'am," the leader called out. "What's your name?" "Natalie. Natalie Brooks." "I'm Jackson. These are my brothers." He gestured around the table. "That's Diesel, Tank, Ghost, Preacher, Bear, Hawk, and Tiny." The man called Tiny was easily 6'5" and 300 pounds. "We won't cause you any trouble. You have my word." "I believe you," Natalie said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. What she didn't know was that Jackson wasn't just any biker. And the choice she just made, serving 8 men that everyone else had turned away that night, would change not just her life, but the entire trajectory of her daughter's future. The storm outside was just beginning. But the real storm, the one that would transform everything Natalie thought she knew about loyalty, family, and what it meant to be protected, was already gathering in the warmth of Ruby's roadside diner. If you're watching this story unfold and wondering what happens when kindness meets the most unexpected people, then subscribe to this channel. Because what happened over the next 12 hours would prove that sometimes the most dangerous-looking people are the ones who will fight hardest to protect you. Over the next 3 hours, as the storm intensified outside, something unexpected unfolded inside Ruby's roadside diner. The Hell's Angels didn't just sit quietly drinking coffee. They transformed the space into something Natalie had never experienced in 6 years of night shifts. Tank, a massive man with arms covered in military tattoos, noticed the flickering lights and asked if he could check the electrical panel. Within 20 minutes, he'd fixed a wiring issue that had been causing problems for months. "Learned this in the Navy," he explained simply. "Can't have faulty wiring in a submarine." Diesel, despite his intimidating name and appearance, pulled out reading glasses and helped Danny with his algebra homework during the cook's break. "My daughter struggled with this too," he said gently, explaining equations with the patience of a teacher. "She's at Georgia Tech now, studying engineering." Preacher, who got his road name from being an actual minister before joining the club, noticed Natalie rubbing her lower back between orders. "Sciatica?" he asked knowingly. "My wife had the same thing from waitressing. There's a stretch that helps." He showed her a simple movement that provided instant relief. But it was Jackson who paid the most attention to details that made Natalie's guard slowly drop. He noticed when she quietly counted tips between serving rounds, saw the worry lines deepen on her face when she checked her phone. He observed how she carefully portioned her own dinner, eating only after everyone else had been served, choosing the smallest portions like someone used to going without. Around midnight, Natalie's phone rang. Her mother's number. She stepped into the back hallway to answer, her voice tight with worry. "Mom? Is Kira okay?" Through the thin walls, Jackson could hear fragments of the conversation. The pharmacy had closed before her mother could pick up Kira's refill. The little girl was wheezing, struggling. Natalie's voice cracked as she explained she couldn't leave work, couldn't afford to lose this shift's pay, and the 24-hour pharmacy was 15 miles away in the opposite direction from home. When Natalie returned to the floor, her eyes were red but her professional smile was firmly back in place. "More coffee, gentlemen?" Jackson stood slowly, his presence commanding without being threatening. "Ma'am, I couldn't help but overhear. Your daughter needs medication." Natalie's professional mask slipped. "It's fine. We'll manage." "Which pharmacy? What's the prescription?" "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Jackson's voice carried absolute certainty. "Hawk, you know where the 24-hour place is on Route 9. A lean man with salt and pepper hair nodded, already standing. 20 minutes there, 20 back if I push it." "I can't afford," Natalie started. Jackson held up a hand. "Not discussing payment. Tell me the name on the prescription and which pharmacy." Hawk rides faster than any storm. 15 minutes later, Hawk roared back into the parking lot, his leather soaked through again but a pharmacy bag sealed in plastic tucked safely in his vest. He handed it to Natalie with a slight bow. "Your little girl's medicine, ma'am. Pharmacist said to make sure she uses the nebulizer first, then the inhaler as backup." Natalie's hands shook as she took the bag. "How much do I owe you?" "Already handled," Hawk said simply. "But the insurance, the copay." "Ma'am," Jackson's voice was gentle but firm. "When someone shows us kindness when everyone else shows fear, we take care of our own. Your daughter needed medicine. Now she has it. That's the end of the discussion." Natalie felt tears threatening and fought them back. These men, these supposedly dangerous criminals that everyone feared, had just done something nobody else in her life had ever done. They'd helped without being asked, without expecting anything in return, without making her feel small for needing it. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay." "You already did," Jackson interrupted. "You served us when everyone else saw monsters. You treated us like human beings. That's rarer than you'd think, and it's worth more than any medication cost." As Natalie called her mother with shaking hands, telling her Kira's medicine was on the way, Ghost spoke up quietly from his corner booth. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what's the situation with your car's check engine light? How did you? Noticed you looking at it worried when we pulled up. 3 weeks you said. That's not good." "Probably the catalytic converter," Natalie admitted. "Repair shop quoted me $800. I've been trying to save up." "Bring it by the clubhouse tomorrow," Ghost said. "I'll take a look. No charge." "I couldn't." "You could and you will," Jackson said, but his tone was kind. "This is what we do, Natalie. We take care of people who take care of us." Bear, who'd been quiet most of the night, finally spoke. His voice was surprisingly soft for such a large man. "Miss Natalie, how old's your daughter?" 7. Almost 8. She like to read? Loves it. But the library's far, and with work. Bear pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "My wife runs a literacy program. Gets donated books from publishers. I'll have her drop off a box tomorrow. Every kid should have books." Natalie looked around the table at these 8 men who'd walked into her diner looking like every parent's nightmare. They'd fixed her electrical system, helped her coworker with homework, gotten emergency medication for her child, offered to repair her car, and were now arranging books for a daughter they'd never met. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why are you doing all this?" Jackson leaned back, his scarred face softening. "Because 6 other places turned us away tonight, Natalie. 6 restaurants saw the patches and locked their doors. One owner literally said we'd scare away customers. You saw 8 cold, wet human beings and offered coffee. That tells us everything we need to know about your character." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There's a code in our world. Loyalty above everything. Respect earned, not given. And when someone shows us the humanity that most people deny us, we remember. We protect. We provide." Tank added, "Most people think these patches make us monsters. You looked past them. That makes you family." "Family." Natalie repeated, confused. "In our club, that word means something," Jackson explained. "It means you're protected. It means your daughter's protected. It means nobody messes with you without answering to all of us." Natalie didn't fully understand what was being offered, but she felt its weight. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to ease. Inside, something had fundamentally shifted. She'd shown simple human kindness to strangers, and somehow, she'd stumbled into a brotherhood that took care of its own with fierce, unwavering loyalty. What Natalie didn't know yet was that Jackson Carter wasn't just president of the local chapter. He was the regional commander of 11 chapters across 3 states, with connections to every major MC on the East Coast. And when Jackson Carter said someone was under protection, it meant something that would soon transform not just Natalie's safety, but her daughter's entire future. 3 weeks after that stormy night, Natalie began noticing changes that made her realize the protection Jackson had promised wasn't just words. The first sign came when Travis Miller walked into Ruby's roadside diner. Travis was Kira's father, a man Natalie had spent 5 years escaping. He'd been controlling, violent when he drank, and the restraining order she'd fought for had been her lifeline to freedom. But restraining orders were just paper, and Travis had always known exactly how to skirt the edges of legality while making his presence terrifying. He slid into a booth near closing time, his eyes following Natalie's every movement with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Coffee, Nat," he called out, using the nickname only friends were allowed. "Black, like you like me." Danny saw Natalie's face go pale and reached for the phone to call the police. But before he could dial, 3 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot. Diesel, Ghost, and Bear walked through the door with the casual confidence of men who owned every space they entered. Travis's smirk faltered slightly as the 3 bikers took the booth directly behind him, their presence impossible to ignore. "Evening, Miss Natalie," Diesel said pleasantly. "Coffee still hot?" "Always is for you guys," Natalie managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Travis turned in his seat, sizing up the 3 men. He was a big guy, used to intimidating people with his size. "This is a private conversation with my girl." "Your girl?" Ghost's voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Funny, because we heard you got a court order saying you're not supposed to be within 500 feet of this particular lady." Travis stood up, his chest puffed. "This ain't your business, biker trash." Bear, who'd been silent until now, slowly rose to his full 6'7" height. "It became our business 3 weeks ago. See, Miss Natalie here is what we call protected. That means anyone who disrespects her disrespects all of us. You following so far?" "I ain't scared of some weekend warriors playing dress-up," Travis sneered, but Natalie noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Diesel pulled out his phone, tapping the screen calmly. "That's interesting. Because I'm looking at a restraining order right here. Filed April 2019. Still active. And the police station is exactly 4 minutes away. Wonder how they'd feel about you violating it." "Unless," Ghost added softly, You'd like to walk out of here right now and never come back. Your choice. Travis looked between the three men and Natalie, calculating his odds. Whatever he saw in their eyes made his decision for him. He threw a $5 bill on the table and headed for the door, but turned back for one last threat. This ain't over, Nat. Jackson's voice came from the doorway, where he'd appeared like a shadow. Yeah, it is. See, Travis Andrew Miller, age 37, currently on probation for assault, residing at 412 Oak Street, apartment 2B. I know everything about you. Where you work at the automotive shop on 5th. Where you drink on Thursdays at O'Malley's. Where your mother lives on Chestnut Avenue. Travis went rigid, his face paling. Now here's how this works, Jackson continued, his voice never rising above conversational but carrying absolute authority. You stay away from Natalie. You stay away from little Kira. You don't drive past their house, you don't call, you don't text, you don't exist in their world anymore. Because if you do, if you so much as make them uncomfortable, you won't deal with police. You'll deal with me and about 200 of my closest friends who take violations of protection very, very personally. You can't threaten me, Travis tried to sound tough, but his voice cracked. Not a threat. A promise. Ask around town about what happens when someone messes with MC family. Go ahead. I'll wait. Travis practically ran to his truck. As his taillights disappeared down the highway, Natalie's legs finally gave out. She sank into the nearest booth, shaking. How did you know? She whispered. How did you know to be here? We've been keeping an eye out, Jackson said gently, sliding into the booth across from her. Tank lives 2 blocks from your place. He saw Travis's truck circling your street yesterday. We figured he'd show up here eventually. You've been watching my house? Protecting your house, Jackson corrected. There's a difference. You're under the club's protection now, Natalie. That means we make sure threats get handled before they become problems. Bear placed a business card on the table. That's my wife Jennifer's number. She's a family law attorney. Pro bono for MC family. She'll get that restraining order upgraded to something with actual teeth. I can't afford. Did I say anything about money? Bear's tone was gentle but firm. This is what family does. Over the next 2 weeks, the protection revealed itself in ways both subtle and profound. Natalie's landlord, who'd been threatening eviction over late rent, suddenly agreed to a payment plan after Jackson had a friendly conversation with him. The manager at the electric company who'd been ignoring her hardship application somehow found her paperwork and approved it immediately after Diesel stopped by to discuss customer service. Kira's school, which had been pressuring Natalie about unpaid lunch fees, received an anonymous donation that cleared her account and funded it for the rest of the year. When Natalie asked Jackson about it, he just smiled. Sometimes good things happen to good people. Don't question it. But the most dramatic change came when Natalie's car finally died completely. She'd been taking the bus to work, adding 90 minutes to her already exhausting commute. She mentioned it once, casually, to Ghost when he stopped in for coffee. 3 days later, Tiny pulled up to her house driving a 6-year-old Honda Civic, clean and well-maintained, with a pink bow on the antenna. Belonged to my sister, he explained. She upgraded, and this was just sitting in my garage. Title's in your name. Just needs a good home. I can't accept a car, Natalie protested. Then consider it a loan, Tiny said. You can pay it back by being the amazing person you already are. Deal. The truth was, the car had been purchased 2 days earlier from an estate sale. The club had pooled money without hesitation, each member contributing because that's what family did. But Natalie didn't need to know that. She needed to accept help without the weight of debt crushing her dignity. 1 month after the storm, Jackson invited Natalie and Kira to the clubhouse for what he called a family barbecue. Natalie was nervous, but Kira had been begging to meet the nice motorcycle men her mama talked about. The clubhouse wasn't the dark, dangerous place Natalie had imagined. It was a large building with a well-maintained yard, American flags flying, and a playground off to one side where several children were already playing. Families filled picnic tables, the smell of grilled food filled the air, and the atmosphere felt more like a community reunion than a criminal gathering. Jackson introduced Natalie and Kira to the extended family. There were teachers, nurses, veterans, small business owners, all connected by the brotherhood. Wives welcomed Natalie like she'd always belonged. Children swept Kira into their games without hesitation. "This is what people don't understand about us," Jackson said, watching Kira laugh as she played. "Yeah, we ride bikes and wear leather. Yeah, we look intimidating. But we're fathers, husbands, brothers. We're veterans who found purpose again. We're men who believe loyalty and honor still mean something." He turned to Natalie with unexpected intensity. "You saved us that night, even though you were scared. You saw past the patches to the human beings underneath. Most people never do that. So now you're part of this. Your MC family, which means 8 men and their families, plus 11 chapters across 3 states, will make sure you and Kira never face the world alone again." Natalie felt tears welling up. "I just served coffee." "You served dignity," Jackson corrected. "You served humanity when everyone else served judgment. That's worth everything to men who are used to being treated like monsters." As the sun set over the clubhouse, Kira fell asleep against Natalie's side, exhausted from playing. Around them, the Brotherhood celebrated family, loyalty, and the bonds that transcended blood. Natalie realized that by opening her heart to 8 strangers in a storm, she'd found something she'd searched for her entire life. She'd found a family that would never let her fall. 1 year later, Natalie stood in front of a mirror in a room she never imagined she'd own. The apartment was modest but safe, in a neighborhood where Kira could play outside without fear. The rent was manageable on her new salary as assistant manager at Ruby's, a promotion that came after the owner noticed how much business had increased since those bikers became regulars. But tonight wasn't about work. Tonight was the annual MC Charity Gala, an event that raised money for veteran services and children's literacy programs. Natalie had been asked to speak, to share her story about the night that changed everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson, "Ready when you are. No pressure. Just speak from the heart." Kira burst into the room, wearing the dress Jennifer, Bear's wife, had bought her. At 8 years old now, Kira had transformed from a wheezing, anxious child into a confident, healthy little girl. Her asthma was controlled with proper medication. Her reading level had jumped 2 grades thanks to Bear's book donations and weekly tutoring from Preacher's daughter, and she'd made friends at the MC family events who treated her like the precious kid she was. "Mama, you look beautiful," Kira said, adjusting Natalie's necklace. It was a simple silver chain with a small angel wing pendant, a gift from the club wives who'd welcomed her into their circle without hesitation. At the gala, Natalie was overwhelmed by the crowd. 300 people filled the convention center, representing not just the Georgia chapter but clubs from across the region. When Jackson introduced her, explaining how one act of kindness during a storm had reminded his brothers of their own humanity, the applause was deafening. Natalie approached the microphone, her hands shaking exactly as they had that stormy night a year ago. "A year ago," she began, her voice steadier than she expected, 8 men walked into my diner during the worst storm of the season. Every instinct I had screamed danger. Every news story I'd ever heard told me to be afraid. Every stereotype society had taught me said these men were trouble." She paused, finding Jackson's face in the crowd. He nodded encouragement. But I looked past the leather and the patches, and I saw 8 human beings who were cold, wet, and asking for help. I saw fathers and brothers and sons who just needed somewhere safe to wait out the storm. So I served them coffee, because that's what you do when someone needs help. You help. Natalie's voice grew stronger. What I didn't know was that simple act of human decency would change my entire life. These men didn't just thank me and leave. They saw a single mother struggling, and they didn't look away. They fixed my electrical problems. They got emergency medication for my daughter. They repaired my car. They protected me from someone who'd hurt me for years. They gave us safety, family, and hope when we had none. She gestured to the crowd. "People ask me all the time, aren't you scared of them? Aren't they dangerous?" And I tell them yes, they're dangerous to anyone who threatens their family. Yes, they're intimidating to people who judge books by their covers. But to us, to the families they protect and the communities they serve, they're heroes. Tears streamed down Natalie's face now, but she didn't wipe them away. My daughter had asthma attacks 3 times a month. Now she's on the soccer team because proper medication isn't a luxury we can't afford anymore. I was drowning in debt and fear. Now I'm building a future because I have brothers who won't let me fail. I was alone in the world. Now I have a family that numbers in the hundreds. She looked directly at Jackson. You told me that night that when someone shows you humanity, you remember. You protect. You provide. But what you taught me is so much bigger. You taught me that loyalty isn't about blood. Family isn't about DNA. Strength isn't about size or scars. Real power is about showing up for people when everyone else walks away. The crowd rose in standing ovation, but Natalie wasn't finished. So here's what I want everyone watching this to understand. The world will try to teach you to judge people by how they look, where they come from, what they wear. Society will tell you that someone with tattoos and leather is dangerous, that someone who looks different from you is a threat. But I'm standing here today as proof that sometimes the most dangerous-looking people are the ones who will love you hardest, protect you fiercest, and stand by you when everyone else disappears. She held up the angel wing necklace. This was given to me by women who'd never met me but welcomed me anyway because their husbands said I was family. In the past year, this family has taught Kira what real men look like. Men who keep their promises. Men who protect the vulnerable. Men who believe honor and loyalty still matter in a world that's forgotten both. Natalie's voice broke with emotion. People are not their stereotypes. Humanity exists in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. These 8 men walked into my diner as strangers in a storm. They left as the brothers I never knew I needed and the fathers my daughter never had. She looked out at the sea of leather and patches, at the families who'd adopted her as their own, at the brotherhood that had transformed her understanding of what it meant to be protected. If there's one lesson I want people to take from my story, it's this: don't let fear keep you from seeing the humanity in others. Don't let prejudice blind you to the kindness that exists in unexpected places. Because on a stormy night when everyone else locked their doors, I opened mine to strangers. And those strangers became the family that saved my life and my daughter's future. The applause was thunderous. Kira ran up on stage and hugged her mother, tears streaming down both their faces. Jackson joined them, wrapping both in a protective embrace while the crowd cheered. Later, as the gala wound down, Jackson pulled Natalie aside. "There's one more thing," he said, handing her an envelope. The club voted. Unanimous. Inside was a scholarship fund in Kira's name, $50,000 contributed by chapters across 3 states, ensuring that the little girl who'd almost been denied her medication would never be denied her education. "We take care of our own," Jackson said simply. "And you and Kira, you're ours now. Forever." Natalie looked around at the family she'd found in the most unexpected place. The brothers who'd become uncles to her daughter. The wives who'd become sisters to her. The children who'd become Kira's cousins. This wasn't just protection. This was love in its most powerful form, chosen family bound by loyalty rather than blood. 1 year ago, she'd been terrified of 8 strangers in a storm. Now, she couldn't imagine facing life without them. The story that started with fear and ended with family proved something the world needed to hear. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is judge someone before you know their heart. And sometimes, the people society tells you to fear are the ones who will fight hardest to protect you. If this story moved you, if you've ever judged someone by their appearance and missed their humanity, then share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that prove love and loyalty still exist in unexpected places. Because in a world that teaches fear and division, we all need to be reminded that family isn't about who you're related to, it's about who shows up when everyone else walks away. And on one stormy night, 8 men in leather showed up for a waitress who'd shown them simple human kindness. That kindness created a bond that would protect 2 lives forever and inspire thousands more to look past appearances and see the humanity underneath. Real strength isn't about looking tough. It's about being kind when everyone expects you to be cruel. Real family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty that never wavers. And real protection isn't about building walls. It's about creating a circle where everyone inside knows they'll never face the world alone. That's what Natalie learned from 8 strangers in a storm. That's the lesson they continue to live every single day. 5 years after that stormy night, Ruby's roadside diner looked completely different. The faded neon sign had been replaced with a bright new one that read Ruby's Family Diner, established 1987, reborn 2020. The parking lot, once cracked and potholed, was freshly paved with designated motorcycle parking that was never empty. Inside, photographs lined the walls. Pictures of MC charity rides, veteran support events, literacy programs, and at the center of it all, a framed photo from that stormy night. 8 soaking wet bikers gathered around a small black waitress holding a coffee pot, all of them smiling like they'd known each other forever. Natalie, now 39, owned the diner. The original owner had retired and offered her first chance to buy it, with financing help from a brotherhood that believed in investing in family. She'd kept the name Ruby's out of respect for its history but added her own touch. Every first Sunday of the month was free breakfast for families in need, sponsored entirely by the MC. Kira, now 12, sat in a corner booth doing homework. She wore a junior chapter support vest, not a full patch since she was too young, but a symbol that she was MC family. Her asthma hadn't flared up in 4 years. Her grades were straight A's. And she'd just been accepted into a prestigious STEM summer program. Her application essay about the 8 men who taught me never to judge a book by its cover, moving the selection committee to tears. The bell above the door chimed, and Jackson walked in, now 52 but moving with the same quiet authority he'd always had. Gray streaked his beard more heavily now, but his eyes still held that mixture of intensity and kindness that had first made Natalie trust him 5 years ago. Miss Natalie, he greeted her with the same respect he'd shown that first night. Coffee still hot. Always is for you, Jackson. She poured him a cup without asking how he took it. After 5 years, she knew. Black, 2 sugars, served in the blue mug because it kept heat longest. Tank, Diesel, and Bear filed in behind him, each greeting Natalie like the sister she'd become. They slid into their usual booth, the one nearest the counter, the one with a small brass plaque that read reserved for family. Kira, Bear called out. How's that science project coming? Almost done, Uncle Bear. Your wife's notes on cellular biology really helped. That's my girl. Jennifer said you're thinking about medical school someday. Maybe. Or engineering like Aunt Patricia. Patricia was Diesel's daughter, the one he'd mentioned helping with algebra that first night, now 24 and working for NASA. A young Hispanic family entered the diner tentatively, clearly struggling. The mother's eyes darted around nervously, taking in the leather vests and patches with obvious fear. The father held his son protectively. They started to back toward the door. Please, the mother said in heavily accented English. We thought this was family restaurant. We go. Natalie moved quickly around the counter, her smile warm and welcoming. It is a family restaurant. Best in the state. Please, sit anywhere you'd like. The family hesitated, eyeing the bikers. Jackson stood slowly, his imposing figure making the father tense. But then Jackson smiled, the same gentle smile he'd given Natalie 5 years ago. Welcome to Ruby's. I'm Jackson. That's Tank, Diesel, and Bear. We're regular customers, and I promise you'll find the best coffee and pancakes in Georgia here. And, Kira added, looking up from her homework with the confidence of a child raised around men who'd taught her worth, the safest place you'll ever eat. These guys are like the neighborhood watch, but with motorcycles and better coffee. The family slowly relaxed, taking a booth near the window. As Natalie served the menus, she noticed details she'd learned to recognize over 5 years of MC protection. The father's calloused hands that spoke of hard labor, the mother's worried expression that came from counting every dollar, the son's worn shoes that had been resold multiple times. She'd been there. She knew that fear, that struggle, that desperate math of trying to feed your family on hope and pocket change. When they ordered the cheapest items on the menu, sharing a single meal between 3 people, Natalie made a decision. She brought out 3 full plates, the house special with everything included. Oh no, the mother protested. We only order 1. First time at Ruby's, you eat free, Natalie said firmly. House rules. And these gentlemen, she gestured to the MC table, insist on covering your meal as a welcome gift. The father's eyes filled with tears. Why? You don't know us. Natalie glanced at Jackson, who nodded subtly. 5 years ago, I was exactly where you are. Scared, struggling, trying to feed my daughter on prayers and pennies. 8 strangers showed me kindness when everyone else showed me judgment. They taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about showing up. So now I show up for people who need it. She placed a business card on their table. That's my number. You need anything, job leads, school supplies, a safe place, you call me. You're in MC territory now, which means you're protected. As the evening progressed, Natalie watched the family slowly relax, saw their son smile for the first time, witnessed the parents' shoulders unbend from a constant weight of survival. She recognized their story because it had been hers. Later, after the family left with full bellies, Jackson approached the counter. "You gave them the card." "I did." "You know what that means? Once you give someone that card, we're responsible." "I know exactly what it means. It means they're family now. Just like you made Kira and me family 5 years ago." Jackson smiled, genuine pride in his eyes. "You've learned well." "I had good teachers." Natalie wiped down the counter, her movements practiced and confident. 8 men walked into my diner during a storm and taught me that real strength is protecting people who can't protect themselves. That real power is using what you have to lift others up. That real family is choosing to show up when everyone else walks away. Tiny walked in, now 47 and just as massive, carrying boxes. "Special delivery for Miss Natalie. School supplies for that family you helped last week. The Martinez family. Word is their kids need backpacks and notebooks for the new semester." "How did you know?" "We always know," Tiny said simply. "That's what family does." Natalie thought about the past 5 years. The single mothers the MC had helped with rent. The veterans they'd found jobs for. The kids they'd sent to summer camp. The families they'd protected from abusive exes. The community garden they'd built in the empty lot next door. The literacy program operating out of the diner's back room every Saturday. One act of kindness on one stormy night had created ripples that spread for miles and years. 8 men she'd feared had become the foundation of a family that now numbered in the hundreds, all connected by the belief that loyalty, honor, and protecting the vulnerable still mattered. "Jackson," Natalie said as he prepared to leave. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing past a scared waitress to the person I could become. For making my daughter safe. For teaching us what real family looks like." "No, Natalie. Thank you." 5 years ago, 8 broken men walked into this diner expecting rejection. You gave us humanity. You reminded us why we wear these patches, why we live by this code. You saved us just as much as we saved you. As the motorcycles rumbled away into the night, Natalie stood in her diner, surrounded by pictures of the family she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back. Kira worked on homework, safe and healthy and dreaming of college. The Martinez family would receive school supplies tomorrow. Somewhere out there, another struggling family would find the card and call, and the cycle of protection and love would continue. The world still judged people by their appearances. Society still feared what it didn't understand. But here, in a small diner off a Georgia highway, a black single mother and 8 HELLS angels had proven that family transcends blood, that strength comes from kindness, and that sometimes the people who look most dangerous are the ones who will fight hardest to protect you. On stormy nights, Natalie still thought about those 8 soaking wet giants walking through her door, about the choice she'd made to serve them coffee despite her fear. That choice had changed everything. It had saved 2 lives, created a family, and inspired a community. And every time someone new walked into Ruby's family diner looking scared or judged or alone, Natalie made sure they left knowing one essential truth: here you're family. Here, you're protected. Here you're home. Because that's what 8 strangers in a storm had taught her. And that's the lesson she'd spend the rest of her life teaching others. Real family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who shows up when the storm hits.